Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Women in Leadership series. We are so glad that you are here with us today. It's great to see you all, and I hope that you're doing well. A lot has happened since we last met, and even overnight, as we learned about the invasion in Ukraine and the loss of life and the gravity of the situation there. And certainly, our thoughts and our prayers are with those that are affected in that region. And even closer to home, here at UT Health, we recognize the continued dedication of our employees, our hospitalists, and our clinicians, all who support the mission of UT Health. The way that you show up every day, despite your own challenges, we see you and we thank you. In some ways, that is why we want to do things a bit differently in today's session. I've learned so much from today's guest speaker about the effects of burnout and other stressors, not only here in our work, but also in our leadership. And while we had originally planned another type of speaker who was going to come to us today and talk more about executive presence and other aspects of your leadership, we find that really nothing is more important, and particularly right now, than you and your well-being. And so when we were seeking a speaker that we could bring before this audience, before you, that could really speak to the heart of this matter, it really didn't take us long to think of that speaker, and we found it in our own Monica Guidry. And so while she's known to many of you, I'd love the opportunity to just share a bit more about her and her background. Monica Guidry serves as the Executive Director at UTHealth Houston in the Office of Employee Assistance Programs. And as Director there, she's responsible for our internal EAP counseling services, work life, and wellness programs, and also for the operations of EAP services for external campuses, also in the UTHealth Rio Grande Valley. She's also done work and works with other external services at Baylor College of Medicine, UT Health San Antonio, and UTMB. Here at UT Health, Monica is also developing a support system for faculty and physicians with professionalism or distressed behavior that impacts the workplace and our affiliated organizations. She joined UT Health in 2010 after spending 10 years as the director of the University of Florida's Addiction Treatment Program in Gainesville. She received her undergraduate degree from LSU and her Master's of Science in Social Work from UT Arlington. Monica has tenure at 3 UT teaching institutions, beginning her post-graduate career at MD Anderson. She also served as the assistant to the chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at UTMB, and her areas of expertise include organizational change, addiction treatment, impaired professionals, and disruptive behavior in the workplace. She is currently pursuing a certification in executive coaching through the College of Executive Coaching, and Monica is professionally affiliated with the National Association of Social Workers, CUPA, SHRM, the National Association of Professional Women, the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, and is the past president of both the Dallas and Houston chapters of the Employee Assistance Professionals. Now, we know her also as a recent recipient of the President's Award for Leadership, and so please join me in giving a very welcome to UT Health's own Monica Guidry. Hi, Monica.
Hi,
How
Julianne.
are you doing?
You know, it's very humbling. There's a lot of reaction to kind of hearing these accolades, and what was even more moving for me was looking at those pictures, the previous pictures of the Leadership Academy, the Women in Leadership, and the Leadership Academy, and oh my gosh, just those pictures resonate with what I'm thinking is so important about today's discussion.
Yeah. And I know that you had a few topics that you wanted to cover today. So, what are some of the things that you really wanted to share with us and that you think are timely, especially in this moment?
I think There are probably two themes that I think are going to be critical that we talk about today that really set the stage for some of the challenges that people are experiencing today. One is compassion and human interaction. The second one is asking for grace and giving grace in our interactions. And when we talk about leadership, a lot of times talking about giving someone grace is not intuitive. So I think it's one of those things that makes a difference in who we are as leaders.
That's a really great point. So tell us more about what you mean by grace. Grace for what types of things?
Oh, grace for feeling less than, grace for judging others, how we question, not knowing what to say, moving through a day to day without being able to recognize joy, grace for knowing when others are struggling, and for any emotions or thoughts or expectations that challenge us at any time. But I'm wondering, if we can circle back to that question a little bit later, because I think that if I can set the stage for what everyone is experiencing about the fatigue that seems to be overwhelming to us, and especially as you just added one, every day adds one more scenario of what everyone seems to be experiencing. And so I don't want to start with a prescription, but hope it's okay if we can get back to that question a little bit later.
Very good. So, what are, when you think about, I like how you said that sometimes it seems as though we need to pause or take a moment. I know that we have an activity planned, and we can jump into that now, or we can do that in a few minutes. But tell us a bit more about what you see, especially from your vantage point. There is tremendous activity happening, obviously, in our world, in our work of healthcare. What do you see in terms of when individuals are able to really identify that they're overloaded, that they're burned out, and what are some of the things that that you've really experienced or just observed?
Um, wow, what conversation this is. I actually couldn't think of a good title for the presentation today. And so I've kind of settled on this is a space for us. We've reinvented ourselves in ways with creativity, with stamina. Um, we have to let go of old beliefs, and um, and yet at the same, and we put all kinds of resources in place. I mean, we recreated how we deliver our services, not just to our patients, but also trying to get things to our employees and their family members at a time when there's just enough hours and there's not enough hours in the day. And so this space for us is to kind of set the stage. One of the things that I've been hearing, don't tell me to breathe or meditate anymore. Or I'm so tired. I don't want to do yoga. I don't want to exercise. I don't want to journal. I get it. I get it that this fatigue is just consuming so much of where we are today. But if it's okay, if I can tell the Reader's Digest of how we got here, it may set the stage and paint the picture for kind of all the things that people are experiencing. And this is not all inclusive. You brought up some significant issues that have just happened that add more to kind of the landscape. And it does not represent everything that people have been experiencing, but if we set the stage for UT Health historically and then where we are today, it may fit a little bit better as to how our own resilience might have been impacted. So here we go on this journey, if everybody is with me. So if we think back, I've only been here 11 years, going on, well, I guess I started my 11th year, but many of you have been here for much longer than that. And over these years, UT Health has grown our clinical footprint. We've delivered significant medical care to the community, especially over the past couple of years. We've developed successfully and strategically been a contributor to science, education, the community, and the state, right? So we've had years of building this platform. In fact, we're pretty much what we figured to be a well-oiled machine, right? In most cases, our lives were predictable. If something was broken, we had departments ready to jump on sites, to strategize, to manage, to fix. Our teams, and I don't mean the new platform, I mean, we're not just individual contributors. We thrived on working together. It's about who worked with us, how we solved problems, how we relied upon our daily experience, our agreements on core principles. We thrived on meetings, on events. I mean, I looked at those pictures, Julian, and I just saw this unbelievable resilience and confidence and feelings of togetherness. And we held this belief that we were on rock solid ground, right? We believed that whatever happened, we were ready with the response and we could pull it together. And it doesn't mean it was stress-free, because that it takes stress to develop where we move to. You know, stress is important. Stress is what we thrive on in order to move to the next step. There were still disagreements, but there was a framework that was built over the years that we trained to, that we encouraged, that we reinforced. If there was a setback, there was a road to reset. And there were guides, there were coaches, there were parents, grandparents, spiritual congregations that helped us build that roadmap. And it was kind of the core of our resilience. We had a confidence, an equilibrium, and then in a matter of hours, probably days instead of hours, but you know, we saw on the news what was happening. The science was telling us we didn't know where it was going, and our world was turned upside down. And so where we are today is both with the resilience that we brought to the table, as well as this new reality that we are trying to develop as an organization, as a community, as our humanness. And of course, we're experiencing fatigue. We're experiencing uncertainty and doubt, but also perseverance. And this experience is not and will not be a linear process. So today, there's this hope for a new roadmap. And then there's some news that may bring that down, and we've got to rethink things. And over the past 2 years, we've experienced from even our most trusted sources that they didn't have the answers. We didn't have the answers. We we look to, during this time, my daughter went off to college, and it's like, I know what your college experience is going to be like. Wow, was I surprised and not even aware of the impact that that would have on her until she shared that recently. So we are on a new ground. And I hear people sometimes say, I can't wait till we get back to normal. And so I'm hoping that we can adjust our language to not talk about what normal is, but to really talk about what are each of us working to achieve. If we think about this, directions were given only to have them changed within hours or definitely by the next morning. You don't have to wear a mask, you should wear a mask. Not only should you wear a mask, but you have to wear it in a different way. And our confidence is waned, our energy gets depleted. And I'm going to say this, I don't want this to be a trigger warning, but I do want to say I don't want people to go back as we talk about this, but I want everyone to see that our fatigue, what we're experiencing right now, is because of all of these experiences. And without the ability to, let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? Recover. There's, if you think it's not just survival, but who thought that a working parent thriving at the workplace would get the luxury of working from home and at the same time be told there's no daycare or easy solution to teaching sixth grade math, or keeping a toddler occupied while you're on a conference call and hoping that your boss doesn't see you doing that because you're supposed to be focused on work. Or I'm sure everybody can fill in the blank to some situation. And I don't know if there's anything that resonates for you, Julianne, that you might that you might share about some of these kinds of experiences.
It's interesting that you raised that, because I came across this article recently and immediately thought of this and this conversation that was to be. And I think you can speak to it, because you're right. There are numerous people that are here in this session today that have had those challenges. I've certainly had those challenges. And then our hearts go out to those that couldn't, and like you said, didn't have the luxury of working from home, and they were needed in clinic. They were needed to do rounds. They needed to be in the hospitals and being with their patients. And so this article that I read talked about working wounded and how maybe we're even unaware that we're working wounded because we're so used to the grind. What could you share with us, from especially to those that are in leadership roles? And of course, in the Leadership Institutes, we define leadership as it's a function. So you're leading no matter what position you have. But what could you share with those who are with us today about that idea of working wounded and what that means when you are also working with and accountable to your patients, to your staff, to other colleagues? What can we learn from that?
What we can learn from that, Julianne, I think is it's not a final, here's what we've learned. I think that this is an ongoing learning process, and in many ways, social sciences is picking up on some trends that are critical from a leadership perspective, but also from a human perspective as a contributing individual. So we have been, when I talked about how resilient we've been and perseverance, we have accelerated our ability to make some significant changes in order to keep things going that probably would have taken us years before. But that's on top of the things that we already had to do. And so for me, knowing my limitations on technology, every time I turn on a streaming platform, whether it's with counseling or a workshop that we're doing, I'm always second guessing myself. I'm always thinking, could I have done it better? I'm always thinking that I'll never get this right. And that plays into my confidence. That makes me look inward and instead of outward as a leader. So I'm kind of carrying, when you train to hike long distances, you kind of put a heavy backpack on. And that way you build your stamina. And that backpack has gotten heavier and heavier and heavier. And yet what we know helps with that are the things we're just getting too tired to deal with. So our working wounded come not with, you did this to me, not with anger or upsetness about the challenges that they face, because they love doing their job. I mean, that's their passion. And yet now it's taking a toll. It's taking a toll because there's not that recovery period. I'll use a different example. When you're in training, physical training, or an athlete, or you're learning an instrument and you're practicing, to perform any of those things. There comes a point in time when you're so focused and you're building your muscle, could be this muscle, could be this muscle, and it is worked until it's fatigued. And then how you progress is that you get to rest. You get to step back and the muscle rests, your mind rests, and then you do it again. What we're missing is that resting, that recovery period. Because once you leave with what here is at work, or once you leave home to get to work, there's not that transition of time. You're still putting things in your backpack to make it heavier and heavier and heavier. And so recovery is important. And yoga and meditation is not the only answer, but it may give us just a little bit of that recovery time to take one more thing out and give us just a little bit of space to recover. But there's another trend, observation I want to talk about. That's in addition to that wounded recovery, because I think it speaks to why that backpack keeps getting fuller and heavier. Social science has really looked at some things significantly over the past 2 years. More isolation, less human touch, more exposure to trauma, less time to recover, our thoughts that keep us awake, more technology to work remote and stay connected, while many of us struggled with, and I think you mentioned this, Julian, accessibility to internet, conflicting priorities while we were doing it, our lack of knowledge to navigate how many times I have to reach out and say, now, how do I turn this off? Or how do I get this to work? Thank goodness for our technical experts, because they make my life a whole lot easier when I know that I can reach out to them. But the things that worked before that would have given us that recovery period aren't as effective as they used to be. So think about this. Our PPE was so important to protect us for our health, except what did it do? It hid our smiles. And the comforting glances that we give people when we're in situations, so that humanness went away. There's no playbook to address, all these that we've experienced. Now, virtual visits are better than no visits. However, they don't guarantee the same level of emotional connection. Anybody been in a meeting and people turn off their videos? And there's a couple of reasons for that. I don't want to just say it's because they're not interested. But one of the things social science showed is the reason that kids are struggling so much with virtual is they see themselves 8 hours a day in front of people, and before they used to be able to blend into the background. And I think many of our own employees may experience the same thing. We miss the endorphins that we get from human interaction. Research shows that connectedness and human interaction have the ability to affect one's physical and mental health. Person-to-person connection triggers our nervous system to release a whole cocktail of neurotransmitters that help restore and rejuvenate us. And the need for connection is inherent in us as human beings. But, I know that there are some interactions with people that may not be so pleasant. So most interactions rejuvenate us in a way that is protecting us from the stress and fatigue and the reoccurrence of trauma in our daily routines. So common denominator to well-being is connectedness. Virtual is better than nothing. Masking's better than risking contamination. But just remember that our nonverbal communication makes us have to interpret what somebody is feeling, thinking, and wanting us to do. And so you put that on top of wounded at the workplace, and you put that on top of struggling because of all the things that are happening to us. So one solution is connectedness. So I think that that's important. And how we in EAP hear this, I'm not sure about you or others on the presentation. No, you hear, I don't have the energy. I don't have the energy to call, fill in the blank, parents, children, siblings, friends, employees, colleagues. And so then we're putting more things back here because we're carrying all this ourselves. So quickly, let me get back to the piece about giving grace. And how does that apply to our emotional regulation and our and kind of our recovery period? So giving grace sounds like it's a kind of a spiritual piece, but it's really about, once again, human connection. So in a short way, giving grace means that we show kindness and compassion to someone that you believe doesn't even deserve, may not deserve it. Okay. So um, whether that's, um, you've been trying to manage from a leadership perspective, you've been trying to manage a process. Let's just use Epic. You've been trying to manage the onset of Epic, and there's only so much time left, and we've got to get it going. It's going live. What do we do? I'm frustrated. I need to manage this process. It's got to work perfectly. And yet there are some people that just aren't able to kind of make it work. What does giving grace mean in that situation? And if I'm so frustrated, do I even have the ability to give grace? Because I'm in a place that is not good. I have a deadline. I'm going to look bad if I don't meet that deadline. And by gosh, we're going to make this happen. And there may be other ways that people feel this, but so today, what I'd like to do is start with ourselves. In order to give grace, I got to be able to ask for it. So in the words of our flight attendants, put your own oxygen mask on first before you try to assist others. Because I can tell you that as a manager, as a leader, those we're trying to manage and lead can tell when we are not being authentic. Then they question, what's the hidden message? What's going on? How do I fix this? So asking for grace does not usually come natural, because we're supposed to have all the answers, right? As leaders and managers and scientists and caregivers. But here's sometimes what it feels like when maybe I'm not giving myself grace. Will I be good enough today in my presentation? This is what I'm saying to myself. Maybe I'm not good enough. What if people don't like what I have to say? What if they turn off their volume? And all of that goes through my mind, and it then helps me get to a place of not confidence, but self-doubt. And then that makes me vulnerable. And then how do I handle this? Do I ask for help? Do I share what I'm feeling? What's going on? And so sometimes this might happen every day. My team knows that when I close my door, that probably, and it's not because of my clients or something along this line, but if I keep my door closed, then I'm probably stressed. They know me that well. And when I maybe beg off of a particular meeting that includes everybody on the team, I'm missing that opportunity to fill my soul with things that people are doing. And I see myself as, maybe it's better if I just not attend because I'm not in a good place. Asking for grace may say, is there somebody else on here today that can lead this meeting? Because I'd love to hear what other people are thinking. So it gives me that opportunity to let others be a part of my well-being, my solution, in a way that I couldn't ask for. I just closed my door. And what this does when we don't give grace to ourselves or ask for grace, it leads to isolation. It leads to feeling vulnerable. It leads to sadness. And we're too valuable as leaders and as team members to let that bring us down and to add more weight to our backpack. So to put our our oxygen mask on first, remember, we can't give grace unless we ask for it. So I said I wasn't going to do a prescription, but I'm going to do a prescription. Feel it, name it, own it. We use this in our counseling services. We use this in, I think Brene Brown might use this a lot in kind of how she talks about her daring greatly and things. You feel it. I'm not sleeping. My heart is racing. My breathing is shallow. And what's going on? What's going on with me? Right? So I feel it. I sit in it. I name it. I sit in it. I name it. Oh, I'm tired, or I'm angry, or I'm sad, or I feel resentful. Oh, I've got feelings around this. Wonder where that's coming from. And sometimes this is just like seconds that we're able to train ourselves to do this. You feel it, you name it. Then you own it. Oh, is this because of something somebody said? Is this because of, oh, it triggers that, somebody doesn't, somebody's giving more attention to a team member or another person, and I wanted that attention. My vulnerability comes out. And that gives me the power to decide what I do with that feeling. And that's what we call, I can't give myself grace that says, I'm vulnerable right now. I should probably let somebody else help with this situation. And I ask for help. It doesn't come easy. But it does mean that there are times when, if I'm going to be able to see it in somebody else, then I need to be able to see it in myself. And it takes practice. So these are the two processes that I've seen have been woefully neglected, not out of intent, but because of everything we're experiencing. And it's connectedness and grace to refill the soul, replenish the energy a little bit at a time. It's the science of connectedness and humanness and our ability to give and ask for grace and help. So maybe now is a good time for us to get into our interactive process. Julian, what do you think?
I think that's a great point, and this is so powerful. I am feeling this. I have goosebumps just as you're talking. So we want to give you all an opportunity to be connected, and so we're going to do something a little bit different. Monica just touched on this, and I'd like for you to participate in this activity, if you would. In a moment, we're going to place you into small breakout groups, and we're going to ask you to just share your response to a couple of questions. And we'll put those in the breakout groups so you don't have to write it down necessarily. But the two questions are to tell us something about your leadership, especially during these last couple of years, that surprised you. And remember, we talk about leadership as a function, not a position. So talk about it, something about your leadership that's occurred over the last months that really surprised you. And the second question is, when you need grace, what does that look like? What does that look like for you? Okay, so Darielle Carvajal is going to work her magic, and go ahead, Monica.
Let me share that sometimes we feel very vulnerable when we get into breakout groups. Sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to meet new people, but stick with us. We hope that this is a good experience for you. I know it will be a good
There you
experience for you.
go. I love that. Thanks for saying that, Monica. Very well said. Yeah, you're going to be randomly placed, so we may have staff and faculty. It doesn't matter. Please feel comfortable if you do to share. So thank you, Dariella. She's getting it set up. When you see the prompt on your screen, it's going to admit you into the breakout room. Just respond yes and share, and we'll see you back here in about 10-15 minutes.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome back. So I think we've got everybody back now. And Monica, you were, I think, going to ask, you wanted to ask and follow up to see how that went and if anyone has anything to share.
So, do we have a group or a team, a breakout team that wants to share what that was like?
Hi, this is Marilyn. I was on a team with Nancy McNeil and Mignon, and we started speaking about the leadership, and I run a clinic. So, for me, leadership is what I do every day. But Mignon, when it was her turn, she said, well, can't really answer that question because I'm not a leader. I'm an executive assistant. And I loved Nancy jumped in right away and said that you really don't understand probably the impact you have in that position as a leader. You keep people in touch with things, you keep the doctors or whoever in check. And so Nancy and I really tried to support her through, don't beat yourself up. You do a great job and you're a leader, even though you don't perceive that in yourself. So it was really interesting. I was really pleased that Nancy jumped in with that. It was pretty cool.
It's one of the things that Julianne had said before, which is it is not a position. It's about a frame of mind, how you interact. It's important to recognize that we all have leadership responsibilities and leadership skills that make a difference all the time. I mean, somebody sees somebody else struggling over here, just the fact that they can reach out and give assistance or give some compassion, I think is important. How about the second question? How do y'all know when you need to ask for help or before you give grace? How do you know when you need the oxygen mask? Any other group want to chime in?
Hi, I'm Emily. So I guess personally my jaw gets really stiff, and so that's my go-to. But we were just talking about how we don't feel we're in a position to ask for grace, and we do push back a bit with comments like, yes, I'll work on this very hard first thing Monday morning when it's a request that's coming in late on Friday, and the expectation that you work on it over the weekend and put your family life and everything aside. But it is very stressful because especially as you get promoted, the expectation is that you owe your life to UT and that you're working 24 hours a day. Whenever you get an email, it's a now response, and it's not I was working on 3 other tasks that are due right now, let me go finish that up. It's a shuffle everything and add this to the list, right? So we didn't really have an answer. We kind of all agreed that it's kind of the company organization culture, unfortunately.
So when you feel it, you feel your jaw, you name it, you're saying, I feel overwhelmed. I don't feel that they're taking my situation, whatever you're telling yourself. And then the next step is the hardest step, I think, which is, what are my options here? I know I'm in a bad place. I know that I'm going to bite somebody's head off, or I'm not going to be as grateful as I need to be with the next person I speak to. So I was sharing with Julianne, this whole discussion for me helped me realize that there are some skills that we probably need to build within our own organization that says, here's before you just give a directive, unless of course it's, don't put that IV in that way. But there may be ways that we think about how do we request things of people and saying, how's this going to impact your weekend? It's very important. Are there pieces of this that you can get to that really talks about that piece versus here, I need this by Monday? Or is there a space in that discussion that says, are there pieces of this that you need first because I'm not sure about being able to complete everything that you requested? So these are the kinds of dialogues that are very difficult when we're virtual, very difficult when our connectedness is been broken a little bit. And what I'm recognizing is that this happens in a lot of different places. I don't necessarily have a solution, but it's a very good question you just said. Or statement. I don't think I have the ability to ask for help. I don't think I will be given the grace to ask for help. That's one of those tough things that we as a leadership team need to really discuss and talk about, and not just point to, well, it was Emily's department that said that. Really, as an institution, how do we make a difference? How do we move that needle? And I kind of always say, sometimes my work with EAP, I'm the caboose when there's nothing left. But how do we move things forward a little bit to include this in all of our educational materials? But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. I definitely, it's piqued my interest to learn more. We're kind of at the end. I wish we could have more groups that could share.
I'd like to jump in. This is Fatumata. I was in a group with Nina Fairbanks and Lisbeth Silva, and we were talking about the leadership. And I said, well, I'm not really in a leadership position. And so just going back to what Marilyn had just said, and Nina said, well, you kind of do lead faculty recruitment. I said, and in my head, I usually say I handle faculty recruitment. I don't think I'm leading. And so it was interesting that she said that, because and then Marilyn, what Marilyn also said, it was just interesting to see how she saw it, and I didn't see it really that way. So
you see how that connectedness, by having a conversation with someone else, be vulnerable enough to show up, make a statement, and now you got some connectedness back. That's that building, taking some of these bricks out of your backpack and being able to recover just a little bit from that kind of stress. So, Julianne, I know that we're running out of time. I do hope that people have received something from today's conversation. And my hope is that it's not the last one, but maybe there needs to be different topics of which we talk about it. Just know that employee assistance, faculty assistance, resident and fellow assistance programs, we're here, as are all of the resources within human resources.
Thank you so much, Monica. This has been, I think, one of the most refreshing sessions and conversations. So just thank you for your wisdom and your insight and all that you've shared. My thanks to some of the people that helped make this possible. I want to thank Dariella Carbajal and Serene Juber, Rita Franklin, Sergio Silva, Elizabeth Hun, Ruth Ramos, and of course our Senior Program Manager for leadership programs here, and that is Valerie Christian Hanley. So Valerie, did you have, actually, would you just put the slide up about the EAP so that people know how to reach out about different programs, wellness programs, and as you're sharing the other announcements?
QR code. You can take a picture of the QR code if you don't want to write down all of this information.
Sure. And Monica, do you want to say a few words on this one, and I'll do the rest of the announcements?
So we want you to know that we have this label, coping through COVID-19. We're going to take that tag off. This is just coping through life. There are a number of resources that are here. If anyone today feels that they are really struggling and need someone to reach out, our phones are answered. We're available 24/7. And it's confidential and it's at no cost to you. So please feel free to reach out to us.
So thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your support. And thank you so much, Monica. It was a much needed session. Thank you so much. So I think we are going to close and let you get back to work.
Thank you.
Everybody.